Hello and welcome to SlimDevOps number 71. Getting up there in numbers. I am Peter, Senior Director of Growth here at Slim.AI. I am joined as always by Nina, the wonderful developer advocate for Slim.AI. Nina, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, a little chilly day here in Boston, but spring's right around the corner, so that's really nice. Yeah, what have you been up to?
Yeah, a few things. Also, recently I joined the Community Leadership Core program, which is run by the amazing community expert, John Bacon. So I'm
Shano
really
Bacon.
excited about, learning more ways to invest in the Slim community. What else? Been focusing on documentation as well. So quite a few updates to our site, which is pretty cool. One of the recent things was a launch of the vulnerability scanning page. So been helping people walk through all the things that we offer with vulnerability scanning for hardening containers. So
Ah.
um, I think what else is there? Oh yes, I did update to the connectors doc, which is good. Gave a little bit of refresh on how to connect like the registries like GitHub, DockerHub to gain access to your images.
Cool. So
Yeah, there
you're,
we are.
yeah, so you've been working on the docs side of the house as a developer advocate and just kind of updating some of the stuff that we have here on the Slim.ai side. Is that right? So cool. So connectors, you've been updating this. Yeah, we've been adding a lot of these connectors over time. So um, I
It's
remember when we
exciting.
first, yeah, when we first started, there were only three, and now we have like all of these. So which one did you focus on? I'm kind of curious. Like what was your favorite kind of like exploration in the connectors?
Well, I walked through a GitHub for the tutorial, but also experience with DockerHub as well. Like both of them to me
Mhm.
are pretty easy and straightforward.
Cool.
But I feel like people are very familiar with GitHub as well, so that was one that I picked to go through.
Yeah, that's awesome. GitHub Container Registry, I think, is getting very, very popular. Of course, everybody knows DockerHub
Yeah.
is kind of the de facto place where you store images, but GitHub Container Registry. Somebody told me a story about GitHub Container Registry that it actually came around based on like a lunch that an engineer had with the CEO at the time, and they said, "You know what? We should have our own container registry." And they said, "Okay, go build it." And so that's where it kind of came
And
came
just
from.
like that, it happened. I love
Y-
that.
yeah. Gotta love working at big companies, right? So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think the GitHub team's been doing a lot of investment here, and so that's pretty cool to see. And yeah, a lot of like ins and outs of connecting your registry. Obviously, it's a hard thing, but once you get it, then you get these awesome. You can pull your images into the Slim.ai tool, and that's pretty fun and good. So awesome. Cool. Oh, and here you've got your images here. You're doing a little blockchain work, a little bit of
Yeah, that was like a few years ago actually when I logged into my Docker Hub because it had been a while since I'd done it on online, and I was
mhm.
like, oh my God, I was into blockchain back in like 2018, so it
Okay.
was to see that I was still there.
Early days, just spinning up
Yeah.
some miners in Docker containers and stuff like that. Yeah, cool. Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, that's cool to hear. And then you said you built out this. I know this one's new. Vulnerability scanning. So sort of how to do vulnerability scanning on the Slim platform.
Yeah.
Um,
I
cool.
think for one of our past live streams, I mentioned how I was digging into all these vulnerability scanning, like on a
Mhm,
general level in the space that we're in, but also like the other layer was the breakdown of like how are we leveraging multiple scanners to analyze images
mhm.
with the Slow platform. So that was what I wanted to get into with this doc. So I'm happy that it's out there now. I should probably update the community on that too.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for people just joining, we're Slim.ai. We are a platform that focuses on containers and container security and optimization. So if that sounds interesting to you, jump into our Discord channel. If you go to Slim.ai, there's a link to our Discord there. You can jump in, ask your questions, find out more from container enthusiasts, ask Nana or myself questions. But yeah, pretty cool example here. I think like that you screen capped of showing kind of the differences between gripe and Trivy, and then you actually get to explain sort of like what those differences are and how different vulnerability scanners might interpret a CVE in a different way, and how that kind of all links to the National Vulnerability Database and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, super fascinating topic. So
Yeah.
cool. Um, Kind of circling back, talk to me about the community leadership core run by John O'Bacon, friend of the stream. He's been on a bunch of times. Maybe we should have him on again. What's that all about, and what are you learning in that?
Yeah, so it's a cohort, it's a pretty small cohort of people, and they're all community leaders to some degree in different areas. And the whole thing is about just really leveling up on how to truly engage and connect and grow your community and provide value. And so that's what I'm really super excited about learning, not only from the courses that he's offering, but also from everyone around me that is going to be a part of this cohort. So it's going to be pretty impactful, and also the networking aspect of it is going to be great too.
Cool, cool. And yeah, Jono is a great presenter. I got to take part in the first one, and he had everybody bring a an object, and I brought my little bobblehead from Fallout, which is appropriate given that it's almost St. Patrick's Day here.
I
Um,
love.
what was the object that you brought, and what was the significance of it?
Yeah, so I don't have it here with me now, but it was actually a necklace. It was a necklace that my sister's friend, and my sister lives in Madrid, Spain,
Okay,
and
cool.
I visit every single year. She handmade this necklace for me with my name on it, and I thought that that was very special that she took the time to do that. So
Oh,
that was my object that I brought.
oh, that's really nice. That's a really nice story. Cool. And is your sister a developer? Does she do something completely different? Is she what's her background?
She is in tech. She is a conference lead, so she's in the
Okay.
marketing space. She works for product school, so she's like flown out
Ah,
in New York, and she runs the whole thing. So it's pretty cool that she found her way into tech a little bit after me. So
that is awesome.
yeah.
I have given a product school talk before here in Boston, so
How did
we
I not know about this?
I know we're making these connections just now. So
Well, that's amazing.
yeah, yeah, it was on the art of over communication, and I think it was the first talk on
Mm.
product that I ever gave. So I love product school. Yeah, they're a great organization. So
I need
cool.
to find that if that link is somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably on my LinkedIn somewhere or something. I was very proud of that. I spent a lot of time on that. I'm not sure if that talk survives. It's kind of a big company talk about like how to break down walls of communication. I gave it when I was at TripAdvisor. I think in small companies, like you're just it's so small you don't run into those walls and that kind of information asymmetry as much. But I'll have to revisit it and see if the talk survived my startup experience or not. But
We'll see.
yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, sounds good. Well, I'm excited that you've been kind of looking at connectors for GitHub Actions or for GitHub Container Registry. I've been doing some work in Container Registry myself. We are getting ready to launch something that I'm pretty excited about. I think it'll be out tomorrow. We'll definitely share it with the community when we get there. But we're going to be launching a thing that we call the community images, and it'll be available. Oops, wrong browser. It'll be available in our brand new GitHub space. So people who have been on stream with us for a little while know that we have this SlimDevOps GitHub page. For a long time, it was just like my individual user that I just happened to call like SlimDevOps, and then I invited people like Martin and other people. Just this week, we changed it over into an organization. We added this fancy README file. We have all of our links here. You can find a bunch of the Slim.AI folks over in the people. And you have sort of like, this Slim containers repo that we've used for a lot of the tutorials that we do on this stream and examples and stuff like that. And we're going to be adding this community images repo. And what that is us running through this automated container hardening process with a bunch of really popular public images. So we can slim those images using the end-to-end test suites of the project itself. So
Nice.
yeah, if we take something like Redis, a database that we've used in various streams, Redis has the like end-to-end tests that they suggest everybody use for Redis. So we use that both to inform the hardening process that we run through in Slim. So it's testing the container in all of these ways. But then we also run the Slim container through that same test suite, and that sort of shows, okay, hey, this actually passed muster. The Slim image works functionally equivalent to the original image, but is, again, up to 10 to 30 times smaller. So pretty exciting project. Can't wait for it to launch. Our developers are just putting the final touches on it. But yeah, maybe that'll be a good thing for us to kind of like dive into next time. I can share a few of the examples and
Oh,
um,
absolutely. That was super exciting. We should do that.
cool. Awesome. Sounds good. But today we're going to be working on something slightly different. We're going to be working on this GitHub action. Is that right? So,
Yes.
yeah, where did
We went over
we
it.
leave off? Yeah.
It's like that's the big question. We were yeah, we were doing something. I remember we were taking a look at the what was it, the workflow, and there was a file that we were getting into, the hardening file.
Yep, exactly right. I think so. So we have a couple links. I'll drop these in chat. Again, if anybody's watching along, feel free to say hi in chat and let us know who you are, how you found us, if this content is interesting. Also, if you're finding this interesting and valuable, give us a follow there on the follow button. We stream every week on Thursdays. So we have this example that's set up by two of our colleagues, Yvonne and Mitranjay, in this Slim.AI GitHub repo. We'll be moving this over to our new repo very soon. And they have this sort of sample Node.js application that runs through this hardening process. And, just a little preview of some of the results that we'll see is, the number of unique vulnerabilities in this container drops by 99%, down to just two. And the size drops from let's see, from 1 GB down to about 90 megabytes. So quite a big slimming result there. And they walk us through this entire process to basically use the Slim CLI to instrument this container, run it and test it, use curl to do like to exercise the container and see what's going on in it, stop the container such that we're going to get the slimming results, and then use our platform to harden the container. That is to say, make it ready for production by removing a bunch of the stuff that you don't need in there. And then we verify it by running through the same basic test framework, kind of like I described in the community images. um, but they've taken it a step further, right? I think this is what you were just talking about, to build out these workflows,
Right.
build, harden, and scan. And so this is a way that you could actually set up automation for this process. Again, using the Slim CLI or using the Slim actions. Um, and so I think what we're going to try to do is kind of replicate this, see if we can use the tutorial to build our own GitHub action, um, and go from there. Does that sound about right? So
That sounds good.
I could just fork this repository and then we would be done, but that wouldn't be very fun or wouldn't be very interesting television. So
This would be a very short stream.
fork and done. All right. Oh, and hello, Big Pod. Thanks for joining us. Big Pod, actually, I should say, was the part one on this. Oh, and looks like Rack 14 is here. Hi, Rack. How you doing? Um, Cool. So yeah, if people have questions as we go through, we can answer them. I think what BigPod had actually helped us do in the first one was to build out this main.yaml, which was kind of a generic GitHub action that we literally wrote from scratch. And then since we didn't have all this like kind of goodness around the Slim CLI tool, what we did was we tried to use Slim Toolkit, our open source project, and use that binary to create the GitHub action. And we were just running into a few debugging issues. I think we ran out of time. But maybe a good thing to start with, why don't we bump over to the web browser? And I think one thing we can do is just, I personally find it a little bit easier when building GitHub actions to um, kind of build them uh, in a code IDE rather than using um,
The UI.
the UI on GitHub. I know everybody's doing these like, ephemeral developer environments and all that kind of stuff these days, but I don't know. I still like VS Code. That's still my game. So, yeah, I'm just going to drop a main.yaml file in here. I might not like ever actually commit this or anything. I might just copy and paste it back into what we're trying to do, but I think this will give me like a little bit better of an opportunity to kind of try out what we're trying to do,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. I think the other thing that I want to make sure that I do, so I'm in my GitHub action repo, and I want to make sure that I have the latest version of the Slim CLI. And maybe BigPod can help me out and tell me if version 8 is the most recent. I might need to update that quickly. Um, but I believe that the Slim CLI, and we looked at this the last time we were kind of going through, it has all of the sort of requisite commands that I'm looking for, like instrument and harden. Those are the two main ones that are in this tutorial that we're going to use. So why don't we go through and try to do that? Um, Maybe what we do here, Nina, just to kind of get started is we just try to do this in the command line and see if we can like take an Nginx image and like instrument it, harden it, and then from there we can start building it back into the GitHub action. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, let's try to do that.
Cool. And I know you've done this a couple times, so I'm going to be relying on your expertise to talk me through the hard parts here. But um, cool. So if I jump back over to the browser window, I'm just going to read through the examples here in this README file and see if I can understand, get a sense for what Ivan and Mitranjay are doing. So we start with a very simple Node.js application, and we have a Docker file to containerize it. So we already have that. That's already like kind of done and easy, and we can show that in a second. We're then going to, they have some stuff here about, this kind of background information and how you would use the Slim portal to get a better understanding of what the image is. And for people who want to try this out, they can go to Slim.AI and click the Get Started button. But we won't go into all of that. Um, let's see. BigPod has a comment on my ephemeral environments. Well, I do ephemeral development environments with VS Code. Okay. BigPod always has like a creative like addition to anything like to things that I say. So BigPod, I want to know how are you doing that? So ephemeral development environment, but with VS Code. Are you doing that through the browser, through like code spaces? Or are you like doing something kind of like kind of interesting or different on your VS Code to actually do that? I'm curious how you're doing that. Maybe you come on stream sometime and show us how to do it. But so now I'm going to get down into this process. I'm just going to keep going and look through what Ivan has here. And our colleague Ivan Veletko Iximuz on Twitter and in GitHub, he's kind of famous for doing these kind of like really awesome diagrams of how everything works. And this is one of his for this process. So we have a 3-step process, which is he calls it instrument, profile, and harden. So we're going to use Slim instrument for the original image. And what that's going to do is take the sensor that we have and add it as a layer to the image that we're going to run. So we have our like simple Node.js application, then we're going to instrument it. And then when we run that instrumented image, it's going to collect all this information. So that's where we do like the curl against it. And that sort of exercises the container, creates that intelligence that we need to do the hardening process. And then we're going to go ahead and go and harden it, right? Which is the step of actually like removing all of the stuff that isn't needed and creating a functionally equivalent version of the container. So down here you can see there's kind of 3 containers that are created in the process. You have the original one, you have the instrumented one, and then at the end you have the hardened one. And that hardened one is the one you want to use in production because it has everything it needs, nothing it doesn't, and you've reduced the attack surface by quite a bit. Does that make sense? Any questions?
I think Big Pod commented nothing special, just Docker containers I remote into with VS Code's remote extension. Nice.
Oh, okay, cool. So you're actually using containers to run your ephemeral environment. I've been hearing that more and more often. Maybe we should do a stream on that sometime. It seems like a lot of people do that. You sort of use the Node latest container if you're doing Node development, or Python latest if you're doing Python development, and then you can, instead of creating in a virtual environment locally, you kind of just install whatever the heck you want um, into the container, and then at the end you just spin down the container and it's gone. You don't have to worry about cleaning up your desktop or anything. It's a cool way of doing it. Um, I wonder if you ever run into issues. I'm curious if you ever run into issues. Do you have to like manage volumes and stuff like that to keep data persistent, or like, what if there's like stuff that you want in there all the time? Do you create your own container as a base image, like a golden image for your own development? Curious how you do that. So, okay, cool. Well, it sounds good. So we have this Slim instrument, include path service, stop grace period 30 seconds, and then here's this GHRCO. GHRCO, Slim.AI, SaaS examples, Harden Slim. So this is the container that they built for this one. So I think that's the command that we're going to need to use to do this. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's do our first before we get into that, why don't we build this container, right? So we can take a quick look at what we have for our, Docker file. Um, Hopefully people can see my screen. It looks like my VS Code is not updating on screen for some reason. So let me figure out what's going on there. Hold on, I'm going to bring us back over here just real quick. Let's see. In the meantime, BigPod says, that's exactly what I do. Only volume, I generally have to maintain the source directory. Mainly because I forget to push code. Oh, right. So like if you're writing code in the actual source directory and then you accidentally spin down the container or exit it, then the data is ephemeral and it's gone. So you link your volume of source code so that you have the source code locally, and that's in your GitHub repo, and then you can push that up. That is a smart tip and something that I would definitely mess up if I were trying to do it. So, all right, cool. So let's see what's going on with my VS Code real quick. I'm just going to do that. That should be working. Okay. Um, let's come back here and see if this is working for us now. All right, server. Okay, cool. We're back in business here. All right. So I was just going to open up the Docker file and rebuild the container. So here you can see that we've built this Docker file. Oh, looks like we might have lost Nina. She'll be back. Internet gremlins are among us. So here we have the Docker file, which is built off the node 18 image. We have a working directory that we're calling service. We're going to copy just our very basic hello world, hello slimmers, express app into that. We're going to change the ownership to the node user, do yarn install so that we get all our dependencies. We'll change the user over to node, and then we'll run node server.js. So let's go ahead and do that. So call it Slim.PSV. Nina, you're back. Woo.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you. Yep.
I was losing connection. But sorry, where were we? Where did we leave off?
So I was just running through the Docker file that we're using after having
Cool.
a little bit of VS Code problems myself. Um, and I was just going to build and run the image just to verify that, okay, this container that we have, the original one, it's like working and, it's doing what we expect it to do. So I'm going to call this one GitHub action node latest and build it here. So,
Nice.
um, yeah, so we'll give that a minute. We have to pull this 1 GB node latest image down, or actually it's the node 18 image, but that's kind of a proxy for the latest image. It's just the 18 version, but it's the fully formed one with all of the dev tools and stuff like that inside of it. It's not like a Slim image or an Alpine image base. And then that's going to run, and once that's done, I'll just spin up that container um, and we can see what that's doing. So Docker images, not sure how many I have on here, but I got a
Yeah,
lot of
we
note.
confirmed that it's there. What is the name of that one again? I think.
So this one was the SlimPSV GitHub Action node. So we got that one, and we know that it is 1 GB in size. So, all right, cool. So we can clear out of that and bring this back up. So then the next thing that we want to do is run it, right? So Docker run.
Cool.
Um, I'll do it in kind of interactive mode. If I remember the ports, always port mapping, 8080 is the
80. Yeah.
is the one that we want. We'll just map the ports 8080 to 8080 so we know where to find it. And then
Do you like to
ITU.
name it? I, yeah. Okay. What was that?
Yeah, okay.
Mm,
Yeah. I'm gonna name it after myself. No, yeah. Call it
you
the
should.
node example. Um, and then I captured too much of that one. So,
I think
so
you set the user to root, or I don't know if that's actually required, but or
that'll
you
come up
wouldn't.
in a minute. That'll come up in a minute, actually. And that's actually a really astute observation. We're just not quite there yet. In that, um, we've actually set the user to node for this image, which is container best practices, right? To say that your user is going to be node because you want to have that security. You don't want to give this container root access to go run in production,
Right, right.
because that, people can, if they take over this container, then they have sort of advanced privileges and they can do different things with it. So that's why you set a user in these, generally according to best practices. Um, if I go back over to the browser window, let's see if this is actually going to work. Okay, cool. So not the world's most exciting app, but I'm over in the browser window. And so here we can see, make this way bigger. One of these days we'll come up with like a more interesting app framework, but here we have Hello Slimmers, Hello Stream. Um, Maybe I'll do something with like Good Night Moon or something. But and if we come back over here, we can see that we had a get command because we're running in interactive mode. So now we're outputting some information. So I can actually, how do I exit out of this container? I've got something going on with my window here that's not going to work, but let me just exit there. Okay, cool. So if I come back into a new terminal, let me see if Docker. Oh, I should have just started a new terminal for that. Docker ps grep node. So I can see this one's still running, this container. And what I'm going to do is Docker stop here, right?
Nice.
Cool. So that should stop the container, hopefully gracefully. Not sure what exactly it needs to spin down, but okay, cool. So we stopped the container. That worked. All of this is going to come back as we go into our instrument step. So, or at least running the instrumented container. So let's go back over to the browser and let's go back into the tutorial. And so here we see the, oops, one sec. Here's the command that we're going to need: slim instrument, include path service, stop grace period 30-second, and then we'll replace our container name with this container name. So that's going to create this like observable container for us. So if I go ahead and copy that, I'll actually write it from hand. So I'll go back over to the browser window and I have to
Yeah,
maybe
I
remind
can.
myself.
Was it
Yeah.
Slim Instrument? Then the options include path, right?
Yep. And we're
Um,
including that service path. So just to stop there for a second, basically what we're doing is this is our working directory for our app. So what we're doing is say, keep anything that's the app, like keep it in this container or just include it. Don't try to do anything fancy. Don't try to read which modules I've installed that I need or not. It's just going to say like anything that's in the service directory, keep it, which is kind of a safe mode. It's sort of safe mode. It's like, the hardening process isn't going to remove anything that you actually need for the application. So it's something we generally tell people to do just to kind of, you can get smarter afterwards, but this is like a good thing just to do when you start. So
nice.
cool. And
Info
then
sec.
some, what was the next one? Stop graceful,
Stop grace
stop,
period.
stop
And I think
grace.
that's set for 30 seconds.
Okay. So can I do that? Okay, cool.
And
And
then
then my
for
container was,
I think it'll be stop grace period space 30 seconds. No equal sign, unless
okay.
there are multiple ways to run that
Okay.
command. Could be wrong.
Yeah,
There,
I don't think so. So cool.
so that looks good now.
Okay, okay. 30S. Okay, cool. So, and what we're doing there is saying, give it 30 seconds after you stop this container, which gives the Slim platform time to kind of like finish collecting all the intelligence that it needs and send it to where it needs to go for the hardening process. That's why we have that one in there. All right, so this one was called GitHub Action Node Latest. And I guess one other thing that I'll point out is I'm actually running this locally. I put a tag on this so I could push this image up to my DockerHub repo, but I'm actually running this locally because I'm using the Slim CLI here. Um, oh, and maybe actually that's not okay. Maybe I do actually need to push this image. So let me see if Let's see. So connector, hardened image. What happened? Connector Bitbucket API. I'm guessing that what happened, I'm guessing that this image isn't up in the cloud somewhere, so I don't have it coming through my connector. So probably what I need to do is do GitHub action node latest. Um, so I'll just push this image up to DockerHub and then it should be available in that connector. I think one thing with the Slim CLI, you do need to have a connector enabled. So for people who saw before, definitely a good first step when you're using the Slim platform is to enable a connector. And as Nana said, she updated our wonderful docs on those. So I will post those in chat for anybody who is curious. So let me try doing the same thing that I just did and see if that actually works. Nope, I'm still getting a bad request on that. All right, if we're gonna debug this, maybe I'll just go through and we'll actually like see how to add a connector. Let's go ahead and do this. So here's what we're gonna look at next, which is just how to set up a connector. I'm guessing that maybe my connector, I know I was doing some work on my connectors, so I'm gonna log into this Slim platform and just see if I can. I'm using this Bitbucket connector, so let me click on that one and see if I can get to that. I have some connected registries. So actually, this connector is already set up, and oh, but no repo entries. Ah, the plot thickens. Okay, so cool. So I'm thinking what I have to do is probably just refresh this connector. My guess is that I know that recently I was going through and doing a bunch of kind of like DockerHub um, cleanup of my API keys and all that kind of stuff. So I was doing a little security on my side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let me see if maybe I accidentally, and actually I should be able to see it here. Ah,
Oh,
that's exactly what I did wrong. So there we go. My dog sounds angry.
reset status.
So
Invalid. Yes.
yeah, so let me go ahead and I will delete that Docker Hub connection. And then what I can do is I'm kind of off screen here, but I'm going to go through and get my Docker Hub. I'm going to get some new credentials from Docker Hub. I'm going to reset up this connector. I
So
guess
you're
actually,
yeah, what were you gonna say?
yeah, no, I was going to say I'm going to go get some new credentials and go through this connectors process again. So does that make sense? Cool. So yeah, just as I go through this, I mean, if people have questions, feel free to jump in and ask us what's going on, what we're doing, who we are. If you want to learn more about Slim.AI, you can go to Slim.AI, the link above my head. You'll also find a Discord link there, and you can jump into our Discord and ask questions. So go ahead and just do this. I'm gonna get back into my Docker Hub. I'm gonna do my best not to leak an API key on stream, which is usually a bad thing to do. So never something that you want to do. I do see in my Docker Hub now that the image is there and available. So all I need to do is go ahead and then create a new.
Yeah, that was the thing I was gonna ask if it actually showed up. I was hoping that it it did because you ran the command, right?
Yeah, and I can show that again in a second. Let me just go ahead and say it's cool. Create this one, and I'm going to do this off screen as well, just so that I'm not kind of getting myself in trouble with my connectors. I
That
do
makes
my,
sense.
yeah, never want to do that. So I'm going to call this one Slip Stream. This in, I'm going to paste that in. I don't have an org ID, so all right. And that token is now there, and it looks like that is working. So if I am where I think I am, I can go back over to the Slim portal, and now we can see if I refresh this page, you can see that, okay, I have this like DockerHub registry that's set up. And if I come back over to the homepage and I go to my connected registries now, Slim
Nice.
PSV is set up. And here I get a list of all of my containers, many containers that have been done on this stream. But now I have this GitHub action node one. And again, I have the latest version of it, which compressed is like 380 megabytes, uncompressed is about a gigabyte. And I can go in and use the Slim platform to go see this one. But I kind of already know what this one's all about. It's a 1 gigabyte node image with a Hello World application in it, like we do all the time. Um, but I know that's live. I know the connector's working. So maybe I'll go back and try that instrumented thing and see if that was actually the issue that we were looking at. Does that sound right? So if I just run this command again, okay, now it looks like it's really doing something. So again, it's updated the connector information that I had before, um, which is kind of important. Shoot, you know what? This,
I think I can see.
yeah, VS Code is updating for me, but not for everybody else. Let me see if I can get that back working again. For some reason, it seems like every time I jump from one to the next, it goes bonkers. Let's see.
But what you did was you ran the Slim instrument command again, and then you started to see something different.
Yeah, exactly. And I have it back here now. So let me just get back over to the right thing and see about cool. So yeah, so this is what I was seeing, which is so we ran this Slim instrumented command. It goes through and does this Slim PSV instrumentation process, and then now I have this hardened image, or sorry, this instrumented container name here, which is Slim PSV GitHub Action latest Slim instrumented.
Nice.
And actually, this is a good question. I haven't played around with this too much. So did this push back um, into my connector? Because I have this version, right, which we were looking at, which is the latest version.
Right.
But if I go over to, I don't know if this would show up right away. If I go back to this um, connector, let me see if I can do this. We're in unknown territory right now. Yeah, cool. All right. So here we can see, actually, okay, this is actually like pretty interesting. Um, Actually, this is not where I thought we were going with the stream, but let's go here. It's really cool. Um, so we have this latest Slim instrumented, right? And you might ask yourself, like, what is that image, right? What did you guys just do? You just added something to my container. What happened? Well, what we did was, you can see that actually it's just slightly bigger, ever so slightly bigger, 5 megabytes bigger than the original. And what we can actually do is compare these two to each other and do a diff using our diff tool um, of latest to the instrumented one. Eh? Eh? So now what we're going to see is what the difference between these two containers are. Um, and we'll see like pretty much exactly what Slim is doing here with this container and what it is, because it's a little, we say we instrument it, we don't really know what that means. But we can really see what we're doing, which is all we're really doing is adding what we call the Slim sensor, right? This sort of intelligence gathering capability. It's something that looks at the Linux kernel as the container runs, and it makes a knowledge graph of everything that's needed to run in the container and nothing that, and you know, reverse everything that doesn't need to run. So since we have a 1 gigabyte container for a Hello World app, there's actually going to be quite a bunch of stuff that doesn't need to run. Um, but all this thing is doing, so we can see there's just a slight difference in size. There's no change in vulnerabilities or anything. But if we click on this file system diff, and here we're going to show in green the things that were added. Here you go. This is what it is. It has this little sensor. It has a bunch of commands, and it has this collector thing. So the sensor passes information in the collector, and we go from there. And actually, if you look back at Ivan's thing, he tells us this. So here's the sensor, here's the collector, here's the commands. Um, but here it is on the Slim portal using our diff tool. That's cool.
This is
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I didn't even think to do this. This is cool. So, all right, but now I have Slim latest instrumented in my environment, and all I want to do is I'm going to run that image. But this gets back to where you were before, Nana, right? Which was asking about, are we going to run it as the root user? Now, why were you asking that question?
Yeah. So I figured that we would need permissions to be able to, for the sensors to be able to do whatever they have to do. That was my interpretation in order to collect the data. And yeah, so you were saying that that is what we should do or what we shouldn't do. I couldn't remember that.
Yeah, no, so you're exactly right. I think you were just at a different, you were actually like one step ahead of
I
me,
was
which
getting ahead of
was,
myself. Yeah.
yeah, but you're exactly right. So when you go kind of further down in this tutorial, which I know you've done this process a number of times, so when you run this instrumented container, you have to run it as root and you have to run it with all capabilities added for just the reasons that you just said, which is that it has to get more privileges and do some things with the container that you wouldn't normally do with the container. Now this is usually running, we usually suggest people run it in a staging environment or in a testing environment, so you wouldn't be doing this in production, so you don't have that sort of layer of like, wait, you shouldn't run things as root in production. That's not what we're saying to do. You would do this in sort of either a staging or a pre-production environment. Um, but by adding these, you have to add these commands during the Docker run to the instrumented part. So that's all this is. So when we were pointing out in our Docker file that we were running this container as node, the node user, now we're going to override that in this Docker command by telling it to run user root and have capabilities all. So those are just flags in the Docker run command. Cool. All
Nice.
right. So yeah, let's go over and do that. And the last thing that we're going to want to do in this is test it, of course, right? So okay, cool. So I'm going to come down here. So again, that's where the user node is, but we're going to overwrite that. And all right, so we're going to do Docker run, as we said, user root, uh, cap add all. Is that right? I think that's right. We'll name it. Well, I was
Yeah.
naming it myself, right? So we'll call it Peter Instrumented. Um, and then, is
I
there
think
anything
that's
else
it.
that I
You
need?
need to set up the ports as well again.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yep. Ports, always port mapping. Always port. Yep, because we're going to have to curl on these ports, right?
yeah.
And then, yeah. And then this time I'm not running the action node, not the latest, but rather the latest Slim instrumented tag,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So cool. So this is going to, okay. So it pulls that image for me. You can see it's actually now, it's like, if you remember, the output from the original container was actually very quiet. It was not verbose at all. We only really had that get command at that time that we ran it. Now we're seeing that there's actually more stuff happening, and this is actually coming from that Slim sensor and that Slim collector. So um, if I go over to a new tab, then what I can do now is curl that container. My curl foo
Should
is,
be
oh, it's actually super
localhost
simple.
8080, right?
Cool. All right. And then that returns the hello slimmers. If you remember, that was our hello world version. So that actually worked. Now, I think what we want to do is come over here to, okay. And then we see the same thing happened here with the get command. Um, cool. So now we've like exercised the container and we've observed. So right now the sensor's running in the container. It's collecting a bunch of information. Every time we curl it, it's going to get new information about that. If we had a suite of tests, we could run it at this point, and that would really fully exercise the container. Um, and now I think is probably the most common mistake that we see people do with these containers, right? Because what's your instinct with this container, right? It's just to hit like Command Z or Command C and just get
Yeah.
out of this thing, right? You
I'm
can't,
guilty of doing that. I'm not going to lie.
all the time, all the time. It's like the only way I exit running containers, right? Like 100%. We don't
Yeah.
want to do that here. We don't want to do that. We need to gracefully stop the container, right? And we can do that by being in another terminal window, and we issue the Docker stop command. For the Kubernetes people who are joining us, this would be like a SIG term thing that you would be doing. We'll get more into Kubernetes later. I'm still scared of Kubernetes, so we'll have to get Ivan or Mitranjay to help us with the Kubernetes version. But
We'll
and
have to
then
spin up
actually,
a support group for that.
we'll have to spin up a Kubernetes environment. Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
We'll have to get well maybe we get raw code, our friend David Flanagan, who goes by raw code. Maybe we'll get him to come on and do that because he's really good at like he knows how to like spin up Kubernetes environments. Like he has like a little open source project that does that, and maybe we'll get him to come on and do that. So Big Pod says, "Don't be scared of Kubernetes. Kubernetes is awesome." All right, Big Pod, you might have to come on and do Kubernetes with us. That's we'll get you and raw code to come help us with that. Okay, cool. And then so I'm doing Docker stop with the timeout 30. Big Pod, what's the easiest way to learn Kubernetes? I have Kubernetes up and running, the Kelsey Hightower book, but I haven't, other than the most beautifully written intro to any O'Reilly book I've ever read in my life, I haven't made it past that intro in Kubernetes up and running. So I'm curious your thoughts on running it. Nina, have you tried Kubernetes? Have you done any Kubernetes work or ever experimented or anything?
I've had to run commands in order to like manage pods at my
Mm-hmm.
well where I used to work at O'Reilly Media. So there's a few things. If we saw some issues, we would have to go in and kind of like restart our pods, and that was kind of as much as I needed to learn. Again, this is a whole thing, like the whole theme about the average developer is like we know just as much as we need to about
Right.
things like Kubernetes and Docker to get by. So sometimes, so
Right. Right. Stack Overflow it until you rerun it and it works, and then ship it and don't think about it again until you have to fix it. So, right. Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people, like don't even have that much experience with Kubernetes, so it's a good thing to know and learn.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. So here we did our Docker stop. We put that timeout of 30 in it, which kind of a safeguard against that, making sure that it has enough information to send the information back to the Slim platform like we want. Um, and now we can see that that stopped our container. If we go back over to this um, version, actually we see quite a noisy output here, but that's a good sign in this case, which is that um, this is basically what we call generating the hardening profile. So our sensor has now like looked at the container, said, I know everything that it needs to have in it. I know what it doesn't need to have. I'm going to send all that information, that knowledge graph up to the Slim SaaS platform. And now you have a hardening profile that we can use to create this hardened image. And we could do that either via the SaaS platform, or we can actually do it right here on the command line as well. So that's cool. I think we're doing good. I think we're, so far things are looking successful for us. I'm going to go back over to the browser window, remind us what we're doing. So Slim Harden ID instrument attempt ID. Okay. I just realized I forgot to capture the instrumented Harden ID. So that might be a problem. It's said very explicitly in the instructions to save that. Let me see if I can get that back. But maybe we'll just have to rewind the stream and go watch for that for the next one. So,
I wonder if it's listed on the platform. I
that's a
feel
good
like
question.
maybe I'm
Actually,
crazy
yeah.
if I saw that in the connectors section.
Oh, interesting thought. Let me see. So we do have these two new tabs, which are hardening and hardened. Ah, ah. Wow, what a helpful thing. Good job. Good thinking, Nina. Nina. So here we have this image that I've been working on, and I know it's from my new connector because it says from Slim Stream, and it was 6 minutes ago. And here it says sensor data submitted. So cool. So if I come here, I am clicking into running and testing the image. Um, and here we've already run these steps. I can manually upload the sensor data. Um, don't know
Hmm,
exactly where that information would be. I'll go look for that information in a second. I've never actually done a hardening this way. But I can also click this button just to harden it. So should I try that? Maybe I'll try that, and then maybe we'll go back and we'll see if we can do it the command line way.
let's
Let's try it. Can't hurt, right? And actually, I see something here that I might have just saved myself. But so this is actually now going through. It's taking all that sensor data that we created. It's determining from that knowledge graph exactly what needs to be running in the final container, what needs to be in the final container, and what doesn't. And then it's going to rebuild the image for us. So cool.
nice.
Uh, Big Pod says while that's running, I learned it by taking my home server and going full Kubernetes on it. Right. Big Pod's home server is like this amazing piece of technology. Big Pod, you should come on stream sometime and just run us through your home server. It has like a self-hosted GitLab on it. It runs Kubernetes. It does all kinds of amazing things. Um,
I
so
think one of the other ways that people can grab the connector ID, because that's the one you're talking about, right? You needed a connector ID.
I think it was the instrumentation ID,
Oh,
which
okay, okay. Totally
which
different.
is an output um, from one of the steps in the instrumentation process. So since I've cleared my terminal a couple times, I need
Yeah.
to think about how I get back. Big Pod probably knows this. Big Pod, how do I look at terminal history if I've cleared it already? Is that possible? Maybe he'll know. Um, but I do think so. What we did was we actually got to the results that we needed. And they actually look pretty similar to the ones that are in the tutorial. So we have a new container. That one is called latest Slim Hardened. We see that we're down to just 2 unique vulnerabilities from 326. We've reduced the number of files by about 90% to
Cheap.
3,000. Yeah. And we've reduced the size. Um, you know, the other thing we can do, and maybe we'll just do this, and then we'll be at a good stopping point if I can't get back to my hardening thing. But what we can do is actually come back to the IDE, and what we can do is pull that image. So GitHub action node latest Slim hardened. That should work, right? And so now we're just gonna pull that image, and so this is actually indicative of something cool too, which maybe not a lot of people realize. A lot of people are like, what is the hardened image, and what is all of that? Um, so it's a single layer image. That's one thing. Like all hardened image are just a single layer. So it does something effectively the same as like doing a multi-stage build or something like that. But it's also much smaller, so it pulls a lot faster, which is really, really nice. So if you're kind of sick of pulling like the latest images or these 1 GB images, these small ones are going to pull a lot faster. Now let's try running it. Um, and one thing to note about running it is actually that we don't need to worry about the running it as root. You no longer need to run it as root. In fact, you very much don't want to, right? Because that you're going to ship this image to production, right? So you don't want it running as root. We only needed that for the instrumented container. Um, this one we can just kind of run straight up and make sure that it works all the same as it did before. Hardened.
I was just looking up the whole get the terminal history thing. I don't think this is the full answer, but apparently you can enter in history and press enter, but I don't know if that's just for one session and if it'll show all the output of the command.
Okay.
That
All
is
right.
something
Well,
to look into.
We'll we'll try it.
Okay.
All right. We have verified that this new image runs just the same. I just ran the same curl command on the hardened container, and here we can say we get that git command, and it works all the same, just as we thought it would. Forgot to name this container Docker images. Oh wait, nope, I'm doing that wrong. Docker PS. Okay, so I'm gonna run the Docker stop command just on this one. I could kill it the other way, but I'm trying to get in the habit of running Docker stop and not just not just killing containers, because that's um, the way things operate around here. So so this container should spin down, and then we should be in a good place. Yeah, nothing like running my. I do a lot of clearing and a lot of LSing. This kind of fun to go back and look at everything Peter does in his command line. Yeah, it doesn't look like we're getting the actual output. These are just the commands. So that's too bad. Let me think if there's a better way of doing this. Well, I think what we might do is I think we might be at a good stopping point. We're at about an hour. As a recap, we got the latest version of the Slim CLI. We instrumented our node container. We built a simple node application and created this um, Docker container out of it. We instrumented that container with the Slim sensor. We ran it and then ran tests against it so that we collected this information, and then we hardened that container. We did it using the SaaS, not using the CLI, but we could. I'm sure we would have figured that out if we had to. Um, and so we basically know all the steps that we need now. Now our goal for the next time we look at this is just to build those same steps into a GitHub action. Does that sound about right?
That sounds good, but we got pretty far. This was cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think seeing the diff between the original container and the instrumented container was actually really cool. I've actually never seen that before, and it wasn't clear to me exactly like, okay, is this a layer? Is this like 30 files? Is it 5 files? It's like, but here we're using our own tools. We just did that. So that's really cool. Um, all right, awesome. Well, sounds good. Well, I think we will be back next week, I believe. I don't know if we'll be finishing this up or if we have a new topic. I know we want to look at some of the community images, um, and maybe we have a few other things. And then the following week, we will actually be getting joined by Captain Corsair himself, Nuno DeCarmo, who is the head of community and developer relations over at Rancher SUSE. And he's going to be coming here sharing a bunch of Rancher desktop and Windows containers. So bring your Windows machine for 2 weeks from now, and we'll build some Windows containers. No, just kidding. But we'll do our best. So yeah, I think that'll be really fun. He's really engaging. He's a fun guy to watch stream if you don't watch him stream, and we'll do that. So that sounds great. Nina, any last thoughts before we sign off?
I don't know. I mean, this was pretty cool to go through it, like how we were able to bounce back and forth when we had to for figuring this out with the CLI and the portal. It was good to see that there was a use in being able to do both of those things. But I'm excited for what we have coming up. And I know for me, I have a few things that I want to get out there with showing the process of hardening an Nginx container image. So everyone should look forward to seeing some content around that.
All right, that sounds awesome. It looks like my video has frozen, so that might just be a good time for us to call this stream quits. And yeah, very much looking forward to the Nginx hardening example. I think that'll be really, really cool to see. So until next time, thanks everybody for joining. Again, hit us up with questions in Discord, and we will see you next week. Thanks all.